Welcome to Harem series of Naruto episode 21. Naruto with Ino. Naruto was currently on a large sailing ship which was serving at the moment as a cargo vessel and heading away from one of the ports on the land where Temujin and his people had settled. He was eager to see his old friend and had wondered how much Temujin had grown since they had last been together. But he was not alone, as there was another one of the Konoha 11 as they were called with him, and they were on a mission as well. Ino Yamanaka had come along as a request by her father, as there had been some reports of dangerous activity there. Normally a team would have been sent for this mission, but with Konoha busy, they could only send out a smaller team with who was available, and the two of them were the only ones in the open roster. Ino was not too happy with the idea, but she was willing to go along with the mission, and that was something that he was happy for, since despite her antics, Ino was more than capable in doing what was needed. Besides that, her skills would be useful for recon work and even for interrogation, though he doubted that they would go that far. That was due to the fact that he had no idea just how much skill and experience Ino had in that line of work that all ninja, either shinobi or kunoichi. Why they did not send Ibiki for it he would never know. Normally she would have not gone alone, but with Asuma busy with taking care of the now pregnant Kurenai, he was not going to be on the mission. Shikamaru was busy handling paperwork of his own, and Kuji was busy on some other matters as well. This meant that she was on her own for this mission. When her father gave her the mission, she was not too happy with it but decided to take it. And when she found out that she was going to be paired with him, she was a bit more disappointed. As for him, he was the only one around since Sai was on a mission of his own, while Kakashi was on a matter that required him to work with Yamato and Jiraiya, and Sakura was busy on another medical training mission. After that battle with Sasori and the encounter with Orochimaru and Kabuto, she needed to learn even more techniques and skills to make herself better if the time came. As for Kurenai's team, Hinata was taking care of escorting her sister and a few other members of the Hyuga clan for an important meeting. Kiba and Akamaru were also on a mission with Hana and her own canine familiars, so they were not on the mission. And that was the reason why he and Ino were the only ones who were on the mission. Once they were there, they had to deal with a few raider clans that attacked Temujin and his people. Even though Temujin was a man who had given up fighting for no reason, he was still a deadly fighter and did his best to help him and Ino. It turned out that the raider clans wanted to do what they could to steal what supplies and resources they had. They had just decided to attack soon and with greater force, and Temujin wanted that stopped. Naruto and Ino did their part, and soon they were moving out with Temujin and a few of his people who were willing to fight with him. They managed to fight off a band of the raiders and captured one of the leaders. Temujin was willing to do what he could to get answers, but it was Ino who decided to take the risk and delve into the man's memories. It was risky as she had no idea how she would do, but she took it. Ino took the shot and soon was able to get the information that was needed, but she had barely gotten out all right, and had to rest for a while in order to recover. Naruto asked for help, and Temujin decided to help by allowing some of his people to help Ino recover while he and his men prepared to fight back. They soon moved out while Naruto tended to Ino. It was a few days afterwards that Ino recovered and the mission was a success for them. With that was over and done with, they were going to get home. The only problem he had was the fact that Ino was becoming a lot more demanding, no doubt due to the fact that she had yet to recover from the battle, the two of them. He knew that he was going to bring her something now since she needed food. He got up and headed to the cabin, but not before grabbing some food from the galley. As soon as he got to the cabin, he sighed a bit to relax himself and get ready for what was to come, and when he entered, there was Ino, awake and looking tired and mildly annoyed, no doubt due to what happened. She looked at Naruto and she could not help but show a slight smile at the sight of the food that was there in his hands, something that she was eager for in a long while since she had yet to eat. "Man, I am very hungry, bring it here." Ino was still using the bossy tone she had when they were kids, all the way to now, though he had been alongside her plenty of times to know that she was not in always a bossy mood. But after not eating for nearly a day or so, her tone was in that mode and all he could do was comply. As he did so, the young woman groaned a bit and replied, "How long do we have before we get to the land of fire and back to the village?" "Not really sure, a few more days maybe if we make good time, which we seem to be unless something comes along to really make things interesting." "Kami, I need to feel dry land on my feet soon. All this moving over the waves the way I am now is making me sick." Naruto did not mind that, since he could tell that Ino was not trying to yank his chain, and since he had no idea what it was like for Ino to do those body swaps, he was not going to comment. As he watched her eat, he looked to see that she had not fully latched on her top and it was sliding down her shoulders a bit. That was enough to make him see a portion on her bust, even though she was still wearing her fishnet undergarments. The sight was more than enough to make Naruto raise his eyebrows and a portion of his perverted brain begin to wake up and take notice. But he recalled that Ino might see him, and while she was not as scary as Sakura when his pink-haired teammate was mad, the last thing he wanted to get into was a match with the blonde woman. However, While his luck was lauded when it came to winning money and beating highly ranked ninjas, it was dismal when it came to getting him away from situations that involved women who caught him acting like a pervert. Ino saw him and recalled that she had loosened her top earlier to sleep better when she woke up a bit earlier, and when she looked to see that her fishnet undergarment near her bust was exposed, she naturally reacted when she shouted at Naruto. "What the heck are you looking at? Damn! Busted." "Sorry about that, Ino-san. I didn't mean to do anything bad. I should get going." Ino was not going to let that slide for a moment as she placed the tray down and quickly moved to stop him by placing her hand on his shoulder and made him look at her. "Naruto-kun, I want to know, what were you looking at towards me?" "Umi, swear that I did not do anything bad to you, Ino-san." Ino looked at Naruto and saw that perhaps he was right and decided to lower her sense of anger and wariness towards him. After all, she and he were on the same side, and besides that, she knew that he was a good person and also someone who could stand by her when something went bad. And there was the fact that he was also one of the strong ninja in Konoha, since he was training very well and had been trained by her Jonin sensei Asuma on how to use his chakra effectively, and Asuma stated that he was going to be very powerful soon for what was to come for him when he faced Akatsuki. "Alright, but you had better not do anything that I might find to be perverted, Naruto-kun. So is anything happening out there on our way home? Are there storms or anything that might force us to dock somewhere or slow down on the way?" "Nothing of the sort yet, Ino-san. The weather seems to be fine and there's nothing going on that might force us to change course or dock anywhere other than back home." Ino sighed a good deal at that and smiled as she was looking forward to finally go home and recover from their mission, and she made that very clear to Naruto as she smiled a bit. "That's good to know. Anyway, I think some moving around is in order. As much as I would love to sleep more, I'd get fat if I just stay here and sleep all day." Naruto smirked a bit and decided to tease Ino a bit. "You remember that mission we had to impersonate a princess and you tried to seduce the guy?" Ino glared at Naruto a bit as she recalled rather easily just what the mission was about. The mission had been a real test for her, since the princess she had to take the place of was supposed to marry a prince and was rather chubby. Ino took her place as the princess to allow the woman in question to lose weight, only to find out that the princess actually liked big-boned and chubby women. Ino was a lot more than a bit annoyed, and Naruto had to resist the urge to laugh it up or else he would be socked in the face. The blonde kunoichi merely sighed a moment later and then spoke to the blonde shinobi. "Don't remind me of that, Naruto-kun. Come on, some fresh air will do both of us a good deal." Naruto did not resist, and soon the both of them were moving up the deck and were soon able to feel the warm breeze and the clear blue sky with some patches of clouds nearby as well. The two did not mind the view, and the look of the ocean was also just as impressive as Ino moved to the rails and looked happily at the sights before her. Naruto could see that and decided not to interfere as he moved away to the other side of the ship and enjoy the sight of one of the islands that they were passing over. The blonde shinobi moved away from the sight to look at Ino, and he could see that Ino was now really enjoying herself as she looked at the sea. Her posture told him that she was relaxed now and less tense than she had been when they came to the deck, no doubt due to the exhaustion she had from before. Once more, however, he began to notice how attractive Ino looked now that the wind was playing with her now long hair and her figure being revealed in her choice of clothes. And since he was a fair distance from Ino and not in her range of sight, he smiled as he recalled that dream he had of seeing Ino along with a few other women of Konoha only in bath towels. He sighed a bit more and decided to focus his attention elsewhere, since he had a lot more to deal with when it came to dealing with Sasuke. There was no sign of the guy, Orochimaru, and even Akatsuki, while most would have welcomed the silence and the peace. He did not, as he hoped to find them and bring Sasuke back, not just to try and convince him not to be like his brother, but to prevent him from being used by that snake-summoning bastard. The blonde shook his head at that as he realized that instead of making him think in a nice direction, he had gone the wrong way. As he looked back at Ino, he was able to see that she was still very calm and enjoying herself, but he was quick to notice a number of young men looking at his blonde partner in a less than friendly fashion, and in a fashion that he was quick to recognize. That was due to him being in the company of the pervy sage for a very long time, and that meant to him that they wanted to do who knows what to Ino. He knew that Ino could take care of herself, but also recalled that she had only woken up recently and there was no telling just how she must be feeling. And there was also the fact that the way those guys moved told the blonde shinobi that these were not the average thugs. They moved like ninja, and since they did not wear any headbands, they possibly could be renegade or mercenary ninja, and that was something that Naruto was quick to be wary of. He moved to Ino's side and quickly spoke to her. "Don't look now to your side, Ino-san, but I think we've got company, and not the friendly kind." Ino acted like she was looking at a nearby group of flying seabirds to the side and spotted the group, quickly seeing what or who it was that got Naruto worried. She could also see as well as Naruto did that they were not regular thugs, but ninja without any relation to any village. Ino quickly did a count and spotted at least 10 of them as she then spoke to Naruto. "Why are they here?" "Not sure, but let's get moving. No sense staying here and getting ourselves caught off guard. The two of them left and soon moved back into the cabin, and they did not need to turn around to know that they were being followed by the ones who had been watching Ino. The two moved as if they were not aware of the approach of the men, and since Ino's forehead protector was not on her person since she never wore it after being a Chunin, the group were possibly not aware of the fact that she was a ninja as well. No doubt they thought that Ino was merely an attractive girl that they could possibly tag and take away. But to where and for what purpose? They were still out at sea and there was no land as of yet in sight. The group suddenly turned away from them and moved elsewhere from the ship, and it seemed that they had changed their minds. That made both Ino and Naruto relax a bit, but Naruto could not help but feel that there was more to the whole affair. And it seemed that Ino felt the same way as she spoke to Naruto. Those guys are up to something, and I doubt that it's good news either. We should be ready for anything. Yeah, but first we need to isolate one of them so we can find out just what they are doing here. But I have to ask, you feeling up for it, Ino-san? Ino guessed quickly and replied, I am ready for it, Naruto. Don't worry about it. The group of renegade ninja was very quick to make their move as they watched Ino and Naruto go back to the galley to have lunch an hour or so later when they went back to their rooms. Though they had lost the blonde pair briefly in the corridors and had to break their pursuit of the pair, and they watched the two carefully as they ate their lunch. Once they left, the group split into two and one followed Ino and Naruto. Once they saw that Naruto had gone into the room he was in, they moved to get Ino's attention. The blonde kunoichi turned to face them and calmly spoke to them. What do you want? The leader of the group merely grinned a bit and replied to Ino's question. We were just wondering who you were and if you were looking for some company. That guy you were with seemed to be a bit on the weak side. We happen to be a band of ninja who happen to have some very special skills and we could use them to keep you company. Ino glared a bit and shook her head at that as she replied, No thanks fellows, I am not interested with what it is you have in mind. And I doubt that keeping me company is in your minds in the first place. So leave me alone or else. The man sneered and replied, Or else what, Blondie? They got their answer when parts of the wall pulled away, and there on either side of the corridor and on the front and back of them stood Naruto. They were Cage Bunshin, and to their surprise, Ino was soon covered in smoke to reveal Naruto himself. The group were soon attacked by Ino's partner on the ship along with his Cage Bunshin, and due to the combined triple assault, all of them were out for the count. It was here that Naruto soon tied up all of the group, numbering 5 at the least, and grabbed the leader and opened the door. Inside was Ino herself. The two of them had indeed gone to their rooms, but in the moment the group of renegades had redirected their attention from the pair to avoid being seen stalking them. The two had changed places, and the Naruto they had seen was a Cage Bunshin, while the real Ino was left in the room with Naruto taking her appearance and was accompanied by a Cage Bunshin while leaving a pair Cage Bunshin to spring the trap. Ino was not fully sure that this was the best of ideas since she was still rather exhausted, but she was willing to chance it. She delved into the man's mind and soon found out that there were other ninjas on 2 other vessels ready to intercept. The group that these cretins were part of were the ones to signal if the ship was worth attacking, and the other half were already signaling their comrades. Ino and Naruto quickly gathered the scrolls and headed to the captain to warn him of the attack with the aid of one of Naruto's Cage Bunshin. The captain was surprised and realized that the renegades were after the ship's cargo of food, supplies, money, weapons and materials, and he quickly raised the alarm. The cargo was not too much, but the renegades apparently did not care as they were still after the stuff. But that did not mean in the least that disaster was averted, as both Ino and Naruto realized that they were too late. The other half of the renegade ninja had already moved to signal their allies, and the ninja pirates were already coming. The 2 Konoha ninja decided to fight with Naruto providing the manpower and shields, while Ino decided to locate targets of opportunity. The captain and his crew soon arrived after getting the passengers who were on board ready to leave should the whole situation go to hell. The renegade ninja's reinforcements soon came to sight, and it was here that Naruto's massive army of Cage Bunshin caught them all with their proverbial pants down. Naruto wasted no time in taking out as many of the ninja who came at them, while Ino spotted a number of ninja armed with crossbows that had bolts covered in pitch, no doubt to sink the boat when they could get what they need and could, or if the ship's crew were too much of a pain to deal with. She soon had an idea and quickly used her family's jutsu to take over the mind of one of the ninja, who she ordered to quickly take a torch and spill over the fuel on the decks and light it. She did it quickly and left to do the same thing on another ninja on the other ship and did the same thing. The move had exhausted her, and it was enough to cause confusion in the ninja reinforcements as they began to try and fight the fires that were flowing all over their ships. That seemed to seal the deal, as Naruto was currently thrashing alongside the captain and his security team the ninja renegades that were already on the ship itself. But that hardly meant that it was over, as the attacking ninja decided that if they could not get the ship's cargo, they were going to sink it. Some of them grabbed explosive tagged kunai and fired it at the ship, and soon the explosions tore holes into the vessel. Naruto and the others decided to get out as the other ninja forces pulled back. The blonde shinobi got to Ino was too tired to move from her spot from before, and they got away as the ship that they were once on began to sink down into the sea as the captain, his crew and the other passengers were out of the area, hoping to get as much distance as they could. Naruto however decided to hide near some of the still floating parts of the ship to see if the renegade ninja were going to try and find survivors to finish them off or take them as prisoners. The surviving attackers decided that with their ships already badly damaged they decided to leave, and that was a good thing as Naruto knew that Ino was very much exhausted and would be in a very vulnerable state. He made sure to keep himself and her hidden away until he was sure that they were now alone and also out of danger from the renegades. Ino got up a bit more, and when she did so she spoke to Naruto. "Are they still here, Naruto-san?" Naruto looked up and shook his head. "They are not, but the other crew in the ship we were on before are already gone. We're on our own here. We have to find a place quickly to rest since we can't stay here forever." Ino nodded and they were soon off to locate a place for them to rest and recover. It was still early in the afternoon and as such, the sun was punishing on them as they moved over the water. Naruto could tell that Ino was already reaching her limits, and she soon proved him right as she collapsed on the water. They had been walking for hours since the attack, and since she had exhausted herself so that was to be expected. Naruto quickly got to her and carried her on his back as he began to summon the Kyuubi's chakra. The Kyuubi was quick to notice this as it spoke to the blonde shinobi who served as his jailer and Jinchuriki. "What the bloody hell is going on, brat?" "It's a long story, furball, but I can say that none of the news is the least bit good." "I can see that. Anyway, if I last recall there should be a very large island at least a few hours from where you are. You might as well hoof it fast before you get exhausted yourself and drown. The last thing I want is to know that you ran out of energy and sent the both of us to the bottom of the sea and become fish food." "I did not know you cared, Kyuubi." "Care for you? It's not like I want to, brat. I don't have much of a choice after all. You die then I die, and while I am not going to be dead forever, dying as fish food is the last thing I want to happen, so haul your human ass to that island." Naruto decided not to argue and off he went. The sun beat mercilessly on him and Ino, and he could already tell that Ino really needed help. And the Kyuubi said that she was suffering from not just chakra depletion, but heat exhaustion. Unless he got cooled down, she was going to suffer brain damage, sickness, or die. Naruto did not want that as he moved faster until he spotted the island. Once he made it there, he quickly sought some shade as well as get some cold water to cover Ino with. He was told by the Kyuubi to get some cloth and soak it to wipe her with cold water to keep her cool. The blonde did so, and it seemed that Ino was going to be okay. Thankfully they were soon near a river with flowing fresh water that Naruto managed to bring Ino to, and she began to drink as soon as she tasted it. The water helped immensely for the two and soon they felt safe. But Ino's chakra depletion was still affecting her, and Naruto decided to look for shelter, and soon found it at a nearby cave that was above a cliff wall near the beach. He got Ino up and soon carried her on his back as he finally climbed up to get into the cave. The place appeared to be deserted and was possibly a former nesting ground judging by all the dry branches that were in nests. He cleaned them out and found at least some parts that had been smoothed over by sand and time and placed Ino there to rest. That was enough for now as he too was exhausted, and soon night fell on the island and soon they decided to go and get some sleep. The next day, Naruto woke up from the back of the cave where they had been sleeping since their escape from the boat sinking. He turned to see that Ino was still sleeping, which for him was good thing since he was not in the mood to be arguing with her when there was no need to do so. He moved out of the cave and saw that at least the place seemed to be in a much calmer state compared to last night when the storm had done a number on the place. He looked to see that the sun had not climbed up yet and there was now some rain falling down over the whole island and on the beach as well. He looked back into the cave and moved to check on Ino, and she seemed to be in a good state of mind right now. She was not yet awake, so he decided to go and see if he could find them something to eat and drink. He got down to the land and moved out into the deeper part of the island, and he was naturally carrying his weapons not only for hunting and gathering, but on the off chance that there were predators on the island. He naturally left one of his cage bunshine to watch over Ino, and when she would wake up, inform her of where he had gone. It was not long in his trip deeper into the island before he spotted a number of fruit trees, and he could see that there were oranges in the area before him. And as soon as he looked at the oranges, he could tell that they were ripe and ready for picking. He took as much as he could and soon moved to see if apart from fruit there were other things to hunt and forage for. He spotted some rabbits and managed to catch and kill one with a swift humane strike to the back of the neck. The others were getting away, but Naruto was quicker and soon had a pair of plump and well-sized rabbits for breakfast along with the fruits. He headed back to the cave, and as he got there, he soon got some of the dried branches and grasses from the former nests and gathered more dry wood to make a fire outside of the cave's ledge. Naruto had to admit that the outdoors living that he and Jiraiya had done in their 2-year training trip had come in handy here, and soon a good fire was done and he began to roast the rabbits. And as they cooked, He was soon joined by Ino, who had managed to recover enough to finally wake up. And thankfully she did not look too worse for wear. "Naruto-kun, what happened?" Naruto recounted everything to Ino slowly, and as soon as she recovered enough of her wits and made sense of the things that happened, Naruto went back to the river they had found and unrolled his scroll and took out the cups from storage that he had to gather water to give back to Ino. They ate their food and drank the cool water, for which Ino was thankful for. As soon as it was over, Ino then spoke to Naruto. "So we're going to be here for a while, I suppose?" "Yeah, not much we can do about it either. We'll just have to survive for as long as we can and hope to spot any ship that might be close enough to rescue us. And possible signal them as well when we can." Ino nodded and spoke once more to Naruto. "You know, I do not mind that we're here. I was hoping to take a vacation from a lot of things back home. I would not have minded having Sai for company, but you are certainly better than no one else. And at least you're someone I know, not some common stranger." Naruto chuckled at that and replied, "I guess that you are right. So let's just make the most of it." The next few days turned into a few weeks and almost a month and a half, as both he and Ino had to settle into a routine for the time they were going to be on the island. Once they were awake, Naruto moved to go out and find food for their meals, while she would routinely look for seabirds and use her family's mind jutsu to take over one of them and go around scanning the island and also the sea. Ino made sure that she only allowed it for a certain distance, since she could not afford to tire herself out. This way they could at least see if any ships were going to be passing by. Once they would spot a boat, she would move and start the massive signal fire that they had placed on the outside of the cave and to the top to make sure that everyone could see it all around. She did not mind, as this at least would let her help when she was not with Naruto in hunting. Naruto would naturally go hunting, foraging or fishing for food supplies, and when he was able to get a good-sized meal, he made sure to get enough to last for 1 or 2 meals. Thankfully the island was not only large but had enough resources for him to get, and the smaller island around the main one had other resources. The animals in question appeared to be some wild rabbits, wild pigs, and also some wild goats, all of whom did not appear to be feral of a sort. There were signs that this island used to be some sort of hideout or abandoned village, since they had indeed found ruins here, but sadly, the ruins were just that and would offer no help in sheltering them, no useful supplies of food or clothing, at least the already made clothes. In order to preserve their own, they only wore their clothes when they were in the cave, and when they left, they would go only with enough to cover the essential bits. Naturally the two of them made sure that they were either far from one another or were well covered when they were in the camp. Ino naturally did that to avoid giving Naruto any more sights of her than needed, since she was very aware that despite his demeanor, Naruto was something of a pervert and she had to be careful. This did not mean that they were in a good state of living when it came to being close to one another. Ino and Naruto would routinely get into a bit of a shouting match or a stare-off, as well as pulling tricks on one another. This might have looked as counterproductive to the eyes of most people, but considering their respective personalities and their previous history with one another, that kind of confrontation was to be expected. Both Ino and Naruto, however, were not attacking one another physically, and they had to admit, at least privately, that the actions they did kept them grounded. And also at times when they were not glaring at one another or in a shouting match, they got along just fine, and they would also relax when in each other's company. They were a lot older now, and while she admitted that she had some leftover feelings for Sasuke at times, Ino had decided that after what she had heard of Sasuke, she could not be attracted to him anymore. That surprised Naruto somewhat, as he recalled just what it was like when both Ino and Sakura were vying for Sasuke's attention and facing off with one another. But he learned early on that while they fought with one another, they were still very much friends, only ending their friendship as kids long ago so they could compete properly for Sasuke. Though now they seemed to be friends again, and while he was not sure about it, Ino had developed an attraction to Sai. And he had a feeling that despite his attitude towards Ino, Sai was only doing it to avoid being socked in the face like before when he spoke to Sakura about what he really thought of her. None of which was a good thing at all in Naruto's mind. Still, it was a good thing that they were able to finally get some time to relax apart from training with one another. Ino's taijutsu skills had improved somewhat, and it was a good thing as well, though her chakra control was not yet as precise as Naruto had seen. Still, overall Ino was a lot stronger than she had been when they were still Jonin. As for Ino, she had to admit that Naruto's training was certainly a lot higher than she had thought when she saw him in action all those years ago when they were younger. Other problems they had to deal with was the fact that some predators called this island home. These were naturally some fairly large predatory cats. Some were about the same as the massive saber-toothed tiger that he and Hikaru made friends with when he had gone to the Land of the Moon years before. They were fairly large and no doubt had to be watched carefully, which was why when they spotted one, Ino would use her family's jutsu to steer the creatures away from them and make sure that they did not bring their pride to their place. They were not the only ones, as wild wolves were also around in the wooded areas and they were more than ready to attack. So in order to avoid them, Ino did the same thing, and it was taxing on her at times, But it was worth it as well. The blonde kunoichi knew that doing so was going to make sure that the predators would not catch them all off guard. She was not the only one, as Naruto would at times release his resident's chakra a bit, and it had some very interesting results as well. As soon as the predators felt the presence of the Kyuubi's chakra, they were quick to back away. They could not sense chakra the way humans would, but the feeling of danger was there, and feeling something far more powerful and dangerous than them was more than enough to convince the creatures not to come any closer. Naruto naturally kept that portion of his powers a secret from Ino, since he was not in the mood to have Ino suddenly become afraid of him. He had no intention of revealing his demonic resident to her, and for a very good reason. Ino was a friend and a fellow Konoha ninja, and as such, he was not going to do anything that would be easily seen as a threat to her well-being and safety. Another problem that he had to deal with was his perverted self. There were times that he caught himself staring at Ino in a less than friendly or innocent fashion. It was just like when he was looking at her back on the ship, only this time, with him and her being the only people on the island, the desire to stare at her became a lot harder to resist. And there were plenty of times in the night that he had to wake up and mentally restrain himself from beginning to think about Ino in ways that could be in quick path to trouble. The fact that Kyuubi was currently egging him on and mocking made it even worse. Apparently not only was the demon fox getting his jollies off annoying the hell out of him, but enjoying the discomfort he had. The real axe to the head was when the Kyuubi mocked him and asked if he was into guys. That had made him sick to the point he actually shouted at the Kyuubi, unaware that he was not only shouting out mentally to the demon in him, but to the real world as well. That was not lost to Ino as she looked at him as if he had finally snapped. It had taken some time to convince Ino that he was fine and only had some stray thoughts run through his head that he did not like. Ino, on the other hand, was not all that convinced by what Naruto had said, and her curiosity was piqued somewhat by what happened before her. She pretended to have forgotten the matter to let Naruto relax, and truth be told, she did not blame him either. She was really feeling the weight of being on this island for a very long time now, and it was not something that one could just easily accept. The fact that she was with him alone on the island was tough on Ino, but for a very different reason. Ino had taken the time to get a look on Naruto, and she had to admit that despite the fact that she did not show too much interest in Naruto publicly, she had to admit that he had grown up a great deal since she had last seen him. He was cute in a sense, but not in the same league as Sasuke in her mind back when they were kids, but she did admit that if he was not such a goofball and dense, he would have been very interesting. But now that he was older now and had undergone a lot of training since she had last seen him, she had to admit that while he was still somewhat the same, he was a lot better looking. In fact, had she any idea that Naruto would be like this when they were younger, she might have tried to get to know him more. The one thing that made her a bit more interested was the fact that he had still retained many of his better traits. Sure, he was still immature at times, and dense, but his bravery was never something she would question. His compassion was nice since he really went the extra mile for people. He cared for others as well, especially those he was with, and she knew for a fact that one can count on him when the stakes were high. She personally felt happy that he had rescued her and helped her out when she was not able to do anything for herself before they got on the island. And at times when he was not looking, she got to see that he had certainly been working out. She wondered why she thought about Naruto like that at times, but she was a young woman and admiring good-looking guys was something of a natural thing for her to do. However, she decided to see if she could pull a bit of a joke on Naruto in the coming night. She hoped to have him under her spell and kissing a specially controlled cage bunshine of himself that was disguised as Sai that she had made just for the sake of seeing how he might react when he woke up smooching with the cage bunshine. The only way for her to do that was use her family's special jutsu, and as soon as she was aware that Naruto was about to go to sleep, she made her seals underneath her blanket quickly and out of sight from Naruto, and just as he was about to close his eyes, she used her family jutsu on him, intent on having some laughs on him after a prank he had done the day before. Unaware that she was about to stumble on a secret that she should not have concerning the history of Konoha, and why was it that Naruto was always seen as the outcast and troublemaker in the village. In Naruto's mind, Ino was shocked to see the massive cage there in Naruto's mindscape. The place looked so imposing and dangerous, and the massive seal tag on the bars added to the whole package. What was it that Naruto had sealed away in his body like this? What is this? What are you hiding, Naruto? That was when a voice filled with malevolence and evil spoke to her question, making her realize that she was not alone in her fellow Konoha ninja's mind. Well now, that's a good question, isn't it? What could the blonde brat of a monkey be hiding in him? I know. That was then Ino saw the massive face of the Kyuubi grinning at her, fangs revealed in a twisted smirk, and its claws there as he glared at her in twisted amusement. He's hiding well now, a member of the Yamanaka clan in my humble abode in my little jailer's brain? And quite a fetching one at that. You certainly are the beauty little one, no doubt the apple of the eye of your father. What's that term again? Oh yes, no I recall daddy's little girl, right? Ino was quick to know what was before her, She might not have been aware of it or saw it herself as she was still a baby, but she knew from the history lessons what or who was the being in front of her behind the cage. The creature in the cage before her was the Kyuubi, or the nine-tailed fox, who was known to have killed many Konoha ninja, including some of her own clan, when it suddenly appeared out of thin air and ravaged the village so many years ago. It had been said that it had been beaten by the fourth Hokage, which led to his death, and that it was being contained and sealed away for all time. But she never thought that this demon would be inside Naruto. How can this? The Kyuubi snarled slightly, enjoying the sheer fear coming from its unexpected guest inside its jailer's mind. Of all the things it had been expecting to happen in the unpredictable life of his jailer, this was not one of them. He knew of Ino since he could see the world through the eyes of its jailer, and had to admit that seeing her in the flesh with his own eyes was interesting. But it decided to play host to its guest. This would be very interesting for the time being until she decided to leave, and who knew what jinx was going to come for her action. How can I be in the blonde brat's mind and body? Simply put, little girl, I was sealed in here by the Hokage, not the blonde Hokage you know of in command of your village, of course, but the beloved fourth Hokage himself, which naturally led to his death afterwards. The demon snarled a bit mentally at the name of the man who sealed him in here, but continued to speak to his guest. And now you know how I was contained. Now at least you know what happened to me, and you can bet that at least you can now see the reason why your fellow villagers have looked down on him. What are you saying? Don't play games with me, little girl. You were after all part of it, even if you never knew what the reason was for it. Your fellow ninja in your generation did ignore and look down on him for years, but never knew why your parents did that along with the other villagers. You never bothered to ask why they ignored and treated him coldly. All you did was go with the flow. Now you know why, don't you? Don't mistake my words though, I could care less about how you treat him, but now the truth is out. I am going to be very curious as to what is it you both plan to do. Now if there is nothing left in your feeble brain to utter from your mouth about this little discovery of yours, be gone. Ino recoiled in shock at what she had just witnessed. She had been hoping to get even with Naruto for seeing her in her undergarments without her permission by making him dress like a girl, and for him to wake up in shock. But what she saw in his mind was utterly shocking, and speaking to the Kyuubi filled her with utter dread. She moved away and could not help but huddle away from Naruto and looked at him. It made no sense to her. Naruto might have been goofy, annoying, thick-headed, and also rather perverted at times. But he was also brave, trustworthy, reliable when it counted, cared for others, and was strong. How could he have that thing inside of him? How could he have been hiding that creature, and why was it that no one else knew about it? As she looked at Naruto, who continued to sleep before her, she could not help but try and figure out just what was she going to do with what she had learned about him. She took the time to look at her partner on the island and then to the outside of their place of residence into the night sky. She knew that she had a lot of things to think about when she got to speak to Naruto. The next few days became a bit tense for Ino, as she had a lot to process in her mind as she and Naruto continued to struggle with surviving on the island and also wait for rescue. The two of them usually chatted, hunted, cooked, and ate their food, sparred, and went out to keep an eye out for any attempt of a rescue. But the discovery that she made concerning Naruto had began to affect the two ninja, though so far Naruto was not fully aware of the whole thing yet. Ino was working hard to try to keep herself acting as normally as possible. Not an easy thing to do with her discovery of Naruto's hidden residence, but she was happy that Naruto did not show any indication that he was aware of her current state of mind. She did not want to think that Naruto was a dangerous person, as she recalled the times he had helped her out, and she then recalled the time she and Sakura had seen the chakra that came from Naruto during the fight with Neji. It was through this that she realized that she had seen the Kyuubi in action before, and that was in that battle with Neji. And then she thought about the times that Naruto had been facing very tough and demanding opponents that he looked like he was not going to make it, only to suddenly be empowered and was able to win. She now realized that Naruto and the Kyuubi had been working together for mutual survival. That did not mean that she was going to stop being wary and watchful, but it did mean that she began to relax slightly and become more open to Naruto, and she felt that it would be best that when they were able to be alone, she would talk to Naruto and inform him of what she knew of his secret. Besides, it might be possible that she might learn a lot more about how these things had happened. The only one who could answer the questions in her mind was Naruto. After all, it was still his body, and as such, he would have a measure of control over the Kyuubi. If he had ever allowed himself to be controlled by the Kyuubi, he would have already destroyed Konoha in revenge a long time ago. Once they were finally able to have some level of privacy and time to talk, maybe they could work things out. Naruto himself could not help but wonder why was it that Ino seemed to be acting a bit different from before. He had not noticed it before, but it was only recently that he began to notice some changes. A few days before, she had been doing her best to try and stay on his good side and avoid getting into a situation that would result in them arguing. That would normally be seen as a good thing in most people's minds, but in Naruto's case, it was a different story. The reason for that was since he knew of Ino's personality, the change in her, while rather subtle, was slightly present. He mentally asked what was it that had changed Ino, but decided not to raise the situation a lot more than he should, since there was no telling just how she would react. It was only now that Ino seemed to relax and be more open towards him, that change made him relax somewhat, though there was still the lingering question in his head. What was it that made Ino rather eager to avoid confronting him and getting into an argument with him or a shouting match? He also had a feeling that there was something going on with the QB, since while Ino was not around, he had spoken to the demon fox, and when he broached the subject with the demon, the QB seemed to be amused and replied that she would soon tell him. That confused him, and he only had an increased feeling that there was more to what he had heard at all. As night began to fall over the island, the two decided to head back to their shelter, and it was going to be the right time for them to finally talk to one another. Neither of them were aware of each other's thoughts, so they were not aware that the events that were going to happen was going to change things between the two of them in ways that neither of them expected. But it was not going to be a bad thing, as it was going to help them finally make their friendship more solid and more besides. That night, Naruto was currently cooking some captured saltwater fish that he caught with his sharpened multi-tipped spear. The tripods that they had made helped keep the spits where the fish were placed were there, and the smell of cooking fish filled their noses. The fish were not the only food items that they were cooking. There were also spits nearby with some roasting wild pig, and on a smaller fire was a pot filled with clean water, and in the water was some fresh fish along with some wild herbs. The soup was good for them, as it would round out their food, as they also had water ready for drinking with them. Ino decided to wait for the end of their meal to finally speak to Naruto, and Naruto likewise decided that after dinner, he was going to talk to Ino. Naruto, however, decided to not speak first, since he wanted to make sure to wait for Ino to be in the willing mood to talk, since he knew that interrupting her was not the wisest of ideas at the moment. The food certainly helped them get in the best of moods. For the rest of the night it was not fully night yet, so at least there was some light left for them. As soon as the food was ready for eating, they got down to the need to eat. They were still a fair distance from their shelter to make sure that none of the more nimble creatures that could be dangerous did not find their shelter and catch them off guard. As the food was being eaten, they both felt a lot more mellow, which was a good thing, as they finished their food, cleaned their dishes, and soon headed back to their shelter. This was a good move for the both of them, as they left behind anything they did not need and made sure to clean up to not leave anything that could guide the predators to them. It was here, as they were about to sleep, that Ino spoke to Naruto. "Naruto-kun, we have to talk about some things." Naruto sighed a bit to himself mentally. He was hoping to get the first in edgewise, but it seemed that fate had other ideas. So he decided to let Ino take that first swing. "Okay then. What is it you want to talk to me about, Ino-san?" "Naruto, have Ito be honest about something. You remember that prank you pulled on me a few days ago?" Naruto thought about what was it that Ino was getting at, and he recalled the prank. He had used his cage bunshine to take the form of the princess that she had disguised herself to resemble, and wearing her clothes no less, as well as her current look, though only more chubby. And as soon as he did that, he had the cage bunshine appear before Ino as she was about to wake up. Ino screamed and thought she was losing it a bit, seeing herself like that, and it was only when Naruto appeared to reveal the trick that Ino was furious about the whole thing and vowed to get back at him. Yeah, look, I think I did that in bad taste, Ino, and I am sorry, but I am planning to prepare myself for your counter prank." Ino sighed a bit and replied, "I did that a few nights. Sabuti was planning to use my family's special mind jutsu on you to have you under my control to make a cage bunshine and have it take the form of Sai, but it backfired." That stopped any comment that Naruto had at the tip of his tongue cold, and he was wide-eyed at Ino. He had expected something of a retaliation for that stunt, but nothing like this, and when she said it backfired, that made his sense of dread and worry even more pronounced. He then managed to get his brain back on track, and he spoke seriously to her. "What do you mean it backfired, Ino-san?" "I saw it." Naruto gave a slight sigh and finished what Ino was trying to say. "You saw the QB?" "Yes, I know that I went too far, but I had no idea." "I know, too. Don't want to sound like I am threatening you, Ino-san, but please don't talk about it anymore." Ino could see that this was something that was causing Naruto a great deal of pain, and she could easily see just why it would do so on him. But she decided to speak to Naruto and wanted to know some things that were very important to her. "I know, but I want to know something important." "What is it?" "How did you know about it?" Naruto sighed and told her about just how he graduated into a Genin, namely on how he had been tricked by Mizuki all those years ago, and how Iruka had tried to help just as the traitor ninja had revealed the truth. He told Ino about how utterly devastated by the discovery he was, and it was only through Iruka's support that he was able to restrain his anger that could have been fatal had the QB affected him early. He told Ino about how he finally mastered his signature jutsu and how he had grown afterwards. And why was it Akatsuki wanted to take him, and she could not help but feel a great deal of sympathy for Naruto. Here he was, carrying this burden, and instead of being given the respect that the fourth Hokage apparently wanted for him, he was treated badly by others, until he began to show that he was his own person and not the Kyuubi itself. The blonde kunoichi also realized that Naruto had always been strong due to being willing to bear the burden and to keep the Kyuubi from harming others. As soon as Naruto was done talking, silence reigned between the two blonde ninja until Ino spoke. "I am sorry." Naruto was confused by that. He had thought that maybe Ino might move away from him due to his being the Kyuubi. The last thing he expected was for Ino to say sorry. "Sorry? Sorry for what?" "For what I used to do when we were kids, had I known." "No, you should not be sorry. Besides, if you had learned about it when we were younger, you might have been even more worried. Besides, as much as I don't want to say it openly, I have gotten used to this burden. I can't deny that it hurts like hell for me to have this burden, but I am not going to give it up." Ino smiled as it seemed to Naruto that they were finally going to be in the best of situations, but she was not going to let things end like this, as she had a feeling that her next set of questions were going to make things between the two of them. "That is good to know, Naruto-kun. So I want to know something else." "What would that be?" "Have you been peeking at me when I was not looking?" Naruto raised an eyebrow at that and recalled that since she had discovered his most guarded secret and he had confirmed it to her willingly, he might as well be honest about it and tell her. "Yes, I have for a while now. It's to be expected though." Ino smiled a bit at that, and it seemed that the matter between them was resolved for the time being. And it was something both of them were relieved to know as they decided to get some much-needed rest. But Ino decided to do something else that Naruto had not expected from her since he had known her as she spoke. "Tell me something, Naruto-kun. If I was to kiss you right now, what would you do?" Naruto was totally caught off guard by that statement, as it was indeed the last thing he had expected to come from Ino herself. He thought it over to come up with some answer to her question that was not going to land him in hot water. It took a bit until he finally decided to try and say something that could appease Ino if he did say something that was going to result in her hitting him. "I would ask you why you were kissing me, and then kiss you back." Ino raised an eyebrow at that and smirked a bit as she replied. "Really now? You would actually kiss me back, Naruto-kun?" Yeah, I would. I mean, if you kissed me I should kiss back, right?" Ino smirked a bit more and decided to let it out a bit more. "Well then, let's see if you are serious about that, shall we, Naruto-kun?" Before Naruto could ask what that meant, he got his answer as Ino moved forward and kissed him right on the lips. Konoha. Tsunade was quite pleased to know that they were soon going to be able to find Ino and Naruto. Recounting their route from the ninja that Jiraiya had managed to locate and interrogate certainly helped them a great deal. They had narrowed down the possible locations that Ino and Naruto had gone and possibly had taken shelter in. The ninja who had attempted to intercept Naruto and Ino's ship months before were now being locked away, and Inoiki had been very thorough in getting the answers to what happened to his daughter since then. The Jonin was not the least bit pleased with Ino's disappearance months before, and it was only his faith in her abilities that he did not try to run about and look for his only daughter. Tsunade and the others had already looked at the islands on the maps and crossed out those that were not able to sustain people for the same amount of time that Naruto and Ino had been gone from Konoha. And soon they found the right island that met the needs of two people more than many times over. They could only hope that both of the blonde ninja were going to be alive when they got there. Tsunade privately hoped that both Ino and Naruto were not tearing into each other, since he knew how Naruto was when it came to driving people a bit batty in the head. Her hope was that they managed to remain civil together and not trying to tear and bite into each other. She had no idea that Ino and Naruto were now tearing into each other as she thought, only in this case, there was no hostility involved with the whole affair. Lemon time. Naruto could not help but moan in surprise as the way Ino was kissing him at this very moment, as the blonde kunoichi was right there and kissing him senseless. He did not know what to do until his more primal side began to take over him. Once it got a good enough grip on the blonde shinobi's wits and mental faculties, he reacted the way any man would. He kissed Ino back and began to touch her body slowly through the clothing. Ino moaned out as she began to increase the passion in her kiss, as she began to also use her hands to touch and caress Naruto's own form through the shirt that he was wearing. Once the kiss between the two of them ended, the blonde kunoichi looked at Naruto and he could see that she had a blush on her face as she did the kiss with him. And this allowed Ino to decide that now was the time for her to finally see what Naruto actually looked like without his clothing on. She started by removing the poncho that he had on, revealing his undershirt, and soon she removed that, followed by his mesh shirt underneath. That allowed her to finally see his naked upper torso. She could not help but smile a bit at the sight of Naruto's well-toned and built form. He had no more of the baby fat on him. There were muscles all over him, and he was certainly fit in more ways than one. She could not help but feel very attracted by the sight of Naruto like this. But she knew that now was not the time, and there was still a lot for her to see, and she moved to begin removing Naruto's pants and boxers. The female blonde removed the animal skin rag he used to wipe his hands clean. Then the pants were next, and then followed by his sandals. Ino looked at Naruto and could not help but look at Naruto from head to toe again. She usually had eyes only for Sasuke and did not find Naruto all that attractive, and truth be told, she used to think that he was a bit of a loser. But after some time, she had to admit that some of the things that she had thought concerning him were actually very wrong. She recalled just how kind and brave he was when he wanted to help others and protect his friends. He might not be the sharpest guy in the brains department even if they were older now, but he was able to surprise her a great deal. Seeing him defeat those Akatsuki guys who had killed her sensei in battle made her think that if Naruto had only been like this when he was younger, he would have really been a sight. Their time on the island and her eventual learning of his burden as Jinchuriki made her see him differently, and the fact that despite everything he was still a good man made her happy to have considered him a friend even though they were not too close back then when they were younger. Now with the clothing out of the way, Ino looked at Naruto who was now completely naked before her. Ino started by looking at his face and the blonde kunoichi could not help but realize that Naruto was actually quite handsome. Sure, he was somewhat cute back then when they were kids, but she had eyes only on Sasuke. Had she any idea that Naruto was going to grow up into a very handsome blonde after a few years, she would have changed her point of view when they were kids. And unlike some people, and even Sasuke, Ino could see that Naruto radiated warmth, kindness, friendship, compassion, and more. Qualities that she had seen in their time here on the island and made her change her mind concerning him and what else she had learned about him while they were on this island. Her gaze moved from his face to the rest of Naruto's form, admiring the muscles in his arms and hands. She also could not help but suddenly feel a shiver of anticipation going through her when she thought of how his hands would feel on her body. She enjoyed that and moved on to look at the rest of Naruto's naked form. She could not help but be amazed by the fact that Naruto was actually buffed up. She had seen only his back when she had caught him half naked, and to see his fully naked upper form was very good to her eyes. He was well formed and muscled, there was not a single trace of fat on his body and he looked very healthy, a strange thing considering that he usually ate only ramen for most of his life. His skin was tanned somewhat and his body had few scars on it, no doubt due to the battles and struggles that he had been in growing up. She then saw the seal that was there and could not help but feel a measure of sympathy go to her senses. She could not help but feel sympathy in her as she had only learned about the burden that Naruto had to bear for so long, and it amazed her that no one in the village knew about it. Naruto did tell her that some did know and instead of being angry at him like others would be towards him, they were all very kind and supportive of him. She guessed that it would be Tsunade, Shizune, and several others, even Sakura herself. Ino placed that aside for the time being as she continued to look at Naruto's form. She soon reached his lower form and could help but blush deeply at the sight of his muscles there. She could not help herself in doing so as she felt her heart beat faster and she could not help but feel her body become hotter as well as her sex become wetter. She moved to where his cock was and she could not help but be amazed by the fact that Naruto's cock was very impressive. He was at least 5.5 inches, impressive in itself, but his cock was not fully erect yet and the idea of what it would look like fully hard and erect made her feel even more aroused. She continued to look at Naruto and it was not long before she decided to speak towards Naruto. She could not help but notice that Naruto himself was blushing at the way that she was looking at him with him fully naked. "You look very handsome, Naruto-kun." Naruto gulped a bit and spoke to her. "Thanks, Ino-chan." That was when Ino decided that now was going to be her turn to show Naruto her own nakedness to be fair to him and to herself. She started slowly to make sure that she had Naruto's full attention focused solely on her. And it seemed that she was getting it the way she wanted, as she started by removing the cloth strip that held her hair the way she liked it. As soon as that was out of the way, she leaned down to release the straps of her sandals and when that was done, she moved them away, removing the fishnet garments that she had on her knees and then her elbows, leaving her only in her purple clothing. That set of clothing was not going to be on forever as Ino was in the mood to finally show to Naruto what she really looked like without it on her. Naruto could only watch on as Ino was now stripping her clothes off and he could not help himself as he was looking at every inch of Ino's form. The first article to go was her skirt, and before he could react, Ino tossed the skirt to his face, blocking his sight. He took the article of clothing as he was not in the mood to be blinded from what he was about to see. Though that proved to be hard to do somewhat as he was able to smell her scent on her clothes and for one reason or another, the smell was rather nice to his nose. He however moved that cloth away to see only the arrival of Ino's tank top to his face. He was not going to let this stop him as he moved the article of clothing aside. And what he saw next was something that he was more than happy to see as Ino had now removed all of her clothing. In Naruto's mind, "Well now not bad indeed, let's hope that you have it takes kid. She's a bit too young for my tastes, but she certainly keeps fit. That much is obvious." In the real world, Naruto could not help but look on at Ino and could not help but be aroused by the sight of the blonde Konoha Kunoichi naked before him in all her glory. He knew that Ino took great care of herself, but seeing the results of that in her training was something else entirely. She was always something of a loudmouth in their youth, that much he knew, But she was rather attractive in her own right, and at times he wondered just why Sakura called Ino a pig of all things when they were arguing. He could understand Ino's teasing of Sakura as having a billboard for a forehead, but not Sakura's way of teasing Ino as a pig. He looked at Ino's hair, which she still managed to keep in a ponytail, and admired the fact that it was in a good light shade of yellow and certainly suited her. Her face was well formed, and it was easy to see why she would be considered very attractive by any man, and her light green-blue eyes added to the whole sense of appeal. His eyes went lower to her well-formed body, and he had to admit that she was certainly keeping herself in top physical form, no doubt from watching what she ate, eating healthy food, training her body to be that of a respectable kunoichi, and also keeping herself in proper physical grooming. All in all, that added to her form being well-formed and proportioned in front of his eyes. Her skin was still cream-white and showed no scars there, and certainly looked very appealing to the eyes in his case. And her skin looked very much healthy and well-nurtured, adding more to the overall beauty that Ino had been given. Her breasts were not as large as some of the women's breasts he had looked at, Tsunade's breasts being among those in his mind. But they were not small either. They were well-formed and large enough to suit Ino's growth spurt, and her nipples were well-shaped and correct, deep red, and very inviting as she looked at him. He could not help but wonder how she had managed to keep her breasts hidden from everyone back in the village. He reluctantly moved his gaze to her lower form, and he could not help but admire the slim form she had as his eyes moved to her toned stomach, her womanly hips and thighs. He noted that she had no hair between her thighs there in the place where her sex was. That meant that she actually shaved there, and he could not help but feel a shot of arousal hit him right there. He looked all the way to Ino's feet, and moved all the way back up to make sure that he did not miss a single detail in his examination of Ino Yamanaka's form. Once that was done, he decided to speak to Ino and say what he knew was worth him saying now that he had seen her naked. "You are very beautiful, Ino-chan." Ino could tell that Naruto was not kidding or teasing her at all, and that was something that she enjoyed immensely. She could tell that she was actually blushing, and she could not help herself as she decided to move towards him, and when she faced him, she spoke to him. "Thank you very much, Naruto-kun. I never thought that I would like to hear you say that." Naruto could not help but blush a bit as he was looking at Ino. Seeing her beauty up close made the whole thing all the more taxing on his self-control. But he was not going to get a break as Ino decided to finally ramp things up between her and Naruto as she moved to kiss him. He could not help but moan at the kiss that she was giving him right now. This was more than enough to convince him that doing nothing was not the best of ideas, and he was more than willing to respond as he was making his move on Ino. Ino could not help but moan out as Naruto was now beginning to kiss her slowly. He was a bit clumsy, but she was surprised at how quickly Naruto was learning how to properly kiss her. The blonde kunoichi could not help herself as she moved to hug him, allowing her naked form to be close to Naruto. The feel of his naked form on her own was something that sent more shivers of pleasure through her body, something that she enjoyed considerably as she began to rub herself even more on Naruto. And the feel of his hot skin on her own served to increase the heat in her body, and she was more than willing to make the kiss between them a lot hotter than before. Naruto enjoyed the more passionate response from Ino and found it to be all worthwhile as he began to kiss her back with his own tongue as they duelled with one another in their mouths. The two blondes had to admit that they were enjoying the taste of one another, and when they parted from the kiss for air, they did so with some level of reluctance. That was soon going to fade, however, as Naruto decided to take the initiative and began to lavish kisses and licks on Ino's skin, making her moan a bit at his actions. They moved from standing up to moving to the bed, and as soon as they got there, Ino lowered herself to the bed, and that was more than enough. Ino could not help herself as Naruto began to lavish attention on her breasts and nipples, making her very happy as the sensations ran through her nipples, through her breasts, and spread from her chest all the way to the roots of her hair to the tips of her fingers and toes, and back again. It felt wonderful in the way that Naruto was using his tongue and mouth on her breasts and nipples. She could have sworn that he was trying to take in her very taste right to her bones, and she enjoyed it for all it was worth. The blonde kunoichi could not help herself as she reached out with her hands to hold him close to her and make sure that he was still giving her breasts and nipples the pleasure she wanted. As good as that felt, however, she decided that now would be a good time for him to direct his oral ministrations on other eager places on her body, and she spoke to him gently. "Touch me more, Naruto-kun." Naruto was more than willing to do just that as he began to use his hands on Ino's naked form, and the blonde kunoichi was more than happy for the physical contact between the two of them. She felt his hands moving from her shoulders, to her arms, back then to her shoulders and down to her chest. Ino moaned deeply as she felt her lover's hands on her breasts, moving over her breasts first, then moving around to caress them gently before moving his mouth on her breasts and nipples. Ino moaned gently as she enjoyed the moments of pleasure with Naruto, and she planned to make her own moves on her lover as she let Naruto have his turn. He sucked her right nipple slowly, licking and rubbing his lips on them. He was not just doing that to her right nipple as he moved to her left nipple, lavishing the very same pleasure he had given her right earlier to it as well. Ino enjoyed it as she moved her hands over to his hair, enjoying the feel of his hair, surprised that despite the way it always looked, it felt good and she enjoyed it all while running her hands on his face. Ino then decided to moan out even more as Naruto carried on with his actions on her breasts, moving from her nipples to licking and touching her breasts, enjoying the feel of them on his mouth and tongue. And she was more than willing to moan out her pleasure for the actions that he was doing her at this very moment. Yes, like that. Ooh. Naruto moved from her breasts and nipples, as he began to run his hands on the rest of her body. Ino moaned at the feel of Naruto's hot hands on her skin. He moved his hands up and down her sides, all the way to her hips, much to her delight, and this was the moment that Ino decided to take her move as she then moved forward. Naruto did not expect that and soon he was on his back as the beautiful blonde kunoichi was now straddling him and she spoke to him while leaning down and allowing her breasts to rub on his chest, making him gasp at the actions of the blonde kunoichi. Now I am going to have my fun. Do you mind, Naruto-kun? Naruto was quick to remember from one of the magazines he had covertly read way back as a kid that saying no to a woman in a certain situation that involved physical intimacy was a bad idea. Back then he would have just ignored it, but he decided to see if that was telling the truth and replied to Ino's question. No, go ahead Ino-chan. Ino was more than happy to do just that as she had more than interesting ideas to put to use on Naruto. Naruto could only watch as Ino took the lead, running her hands on his face, while kissing him deeply. He could feel her sex which was slowly releasing more of her juices. He could not help but enjoy it as he felt her wetness flow on his own hips. Ino seemed very aware of it as she made sure to rub her pussy on his body while she continued to kiss him. The kiss then ended as she moved down to run kisses on his chest. Ino enjoyed the moments there between her and Naruto and she could not help but relish the feel of his hot skin and the hard muscles underneath. The feel of her lover's body underneath her body, mouth, tongue, and fingers aroused her and she could not help but be happy that this was happening between the two of them. She moved her actions to Naruto's chest but not before moving forward and rubbing her breasts on Naruto's face, enjoying the feel of his breath on her nipples and breasts. She then moved back to his chest, playing with his own nipples, making him moan out much to her pleasure. Ooh. Ino decided to tease her lover a bit more. Oz then moved to his ear and whispered to him. You like that, Naruto-kun? Why yes. Ino smiled as she could see that Naruto was not lying to her in any stretch of the imagination and so she spoke once more to him. Good, and I want you to never forget it for as long as you can, Naruto-kun, because I am going to do more than just this to you for this night. And sure enough, she did just that as she began to move down to his chest, rubbing her breasts and nipples on his own while kissing him deeply. Once the kiss ended between the two of them, she moved down to begin licking his chest and nipples, even gently biting them while running her hands down on his body. Naruto could not help but moan a bit in both pleasure and a bit of pain and speak out Ino's name. Ino-chan. Naruto's cry was more than warranted as Ino was now moving her breasts and nipples on his naked form alongside her hands. That was more than enough to get Ino all excited as she moved her attention to his stomach. She looked at the symbol and then back to Naruto. Now that she knew what it meant, she looked at Naruto with sympathy in her mind but decided that now was the time to think about the negative things. She gently kissed the symbol and licked it before running her hands on Naruto's naked form, enjoying the feel of his hot skin and the muscles that were underneath. Ino enjoyed the whole affair and she could not help but moved on lower. She did however feel her lover's cock rub her stomach. She blushed bright red as she felt the hardness it had, and when she looked at it now that it was fully aroused, it was very much worth every second to look at. Ino could not help but wonder just how it was going to feel in her hands, between her breasts, mouth and her wet sex. She would have not thought about it, but she could not help herself as she decided to go ahead and fulfill her desire as she ran her hands first on Naruto's cock, enjoying the hardness, smoothness, and length she felt there. She also moved her hands to his balls, gently moving her hands around Naruto's sex and making sure not to harm him. Naruto himself could not help but look on as how Ino was currently running her hands on his cock, and he could also feel her hands caressing his testicles. The sight of Ino doing that while fully naked was a sight that he knew he was not going to forget for a very long time. Neither would he want to either, but that was merely the beginning for him as he looked at Ino as she began to rub his cock with her nipples and breasts as he moaned out her name deeply as he felt her boobs on his cock. Ah, Ino-chan. The blonde kunoichi in question enjoyed the feel of her lover's cock on her breasts and nipples as well as relishing the moaning being given by her lover. She had read about this and was more than willing to try it out. She had once thought of doing it to Sasuke or Sai, but it felt good and right that she had decided to do this to Naruto. And since he had never done this with anyone but her, she was going to enjoy every second of it. She started at first by running her lips on Naruto's cock, and she heard Naruto gasp out at her boldness, and she began to kiss Naruto's cock at the same time. She ran her lips up and down, kissing all the while and also moving to his balls. The feel of her lover's sex on her lips was very much worth it, and she could feel his cock twitch with her actions. She then moved her lips to his testicles and enjoyed the feel of them on her lips. So much so that she took them into her mouth, making sure to do it gently and avoided running her teeth on them. "Cammy. That feels so good," Naruto gasped out loudly as he could easily guess just what Ino was doing to him right now, and the sight of Ino licking and sucking his balls with a deep blush on her beautiful face was really good. He could only watch and cry out as he moved to caress her face and hair as she continued to kiss, lick, and suck his balls. He was a bit disappointed when he felt her move away from his balls, but that disappointment was soon gone as she began to lick his cock with her tongue. He looked at Ino as she began to lick his cock from base to tip and back again, the sight of that very much welcome in his mind. He caressed Ino's face and she looked at him with a smile on her face as she even rubbed her face on his cock while licking it at the same time. That was a very erotic sight in his mind, but he was going to get a whole lot more to see as Ino decided to bring the whole situation to a close. Ino smiled at the blush on her lover's face and then took in her lover's sex slowly, licking and kissing the tip first and then moving in with the rest of her mouth. She started the whole thing bit by bit to make sure that she was going to be doing it in a good pace. As she took in every inch of Naruto's cock, she moved her tongue all around his cock while sucking on it loudly. She had to counter her body's gag reflex as she wanted to take in Naruto's full length into her mouth. Ooh! The blonde kunoichi enjoyed the moan unleashed by Naruto at this moment as she finally took his cock deeply into her mouth. And she did not hide the fact that she enjoyed it as well, and as soon as she took her lover's cock to base, she did not move for a while to get herself used to the sensation of Naruto's cock deep in her mouth. The taste was certainly good as well as the hardness and the heat coming from Naruto's dick. As for the blonde shinobi, he could not help but stare at the sight of Ino taking his penis in her mouth and relishing every second of it as well. That was a sight that he knew was going to be hard to forget, and as soon as she stopped moving, he enjoyed the feel of her mouth all around his sex. He had no doubt that this was only the beginning, and he was right as he watched Ino begin to move her head back, and he was more than willing to speak out his utter arousal. "Ino-chan. Ooh. Ino enjoyed that as she moved back her head, and as soon as she had only the tip of her lover's cock in her mouth, she began to suck, lick, and kiss it as well. Once she was done doing that, she then moved to take in Naruto's cock back into her mouth. She did it slowly to enjoy the feeling that this had given her. She did all of this rather slowly to make sure that she was able to get used to the position, angle, and feelings that came with her actions. Once she was done taking in Naruto's dick to the base, she moved back up again, doing things very slowly to make it last between her and Naruto before she was going to pick up the pace. She enjoyed the pleasure, and she could hear Naruto's more than pleasured moans from her actions, and that coupled with the way his cock twitched with each time she moved her mouth up and down as well as moving her tongue made her all the more pleased. Ooh, yes, more Ino-chan. Yes. Ino was soon picking up the pace as she was now used to the whole pace of her giving oral sex to her lover. Her once slow pace was now speeding up, and the sounds of her actions was filling up the shelter that they called him. Naruto was more than willing to moan out his encouragement, and she could not help but also feel her pussy become hotter and wetter by the moment, and there was no doubt in her mind that she was soon going to bring Naruto to orgasm, and she looked forward to that very much. Naruto himself was trying his best to hold on, but the pleasure continued to run through his body, and it was not going to be long before he finally reached his limits. That much was already obvious to him as the pleasure continued by the second. He was holding onto Ino and had to move his hands away and hold the cloth covering beneath him. And while he was doing this, Ino was continued to move at a much faster pace, and on occasion, she would release his cock from her mouth to do the same thing to his testicles while moving her hands up and down his dick. And she then went back to it, and he could not help but feel his climax come ever closer to him. Ah, Cammy, that feels good. Ino on her part was more than able to sense the coming release of her lover's cum and was very eager for it. And she was not going to wait for much longer as Naruto finally cried out in release. Yes. That coupled with the taste of pre-cum on her tongue and the twitching of his cock was all the warning Ino got as she was soon filled in the mouth by Naruto's seed. And the results were worth it as Ino blushed bright red at the warmth, thickness, sweetness, and slight saltiness of her lover's cum. The one thing that she took to heart apart from the other things was the fact that Naruto was releasing so much of his cum at that exact moment, and it was taking her a good deal of effort to take all of that in. She did not hesitate as she took it all in and relished it, and saw that Naruto himself was watching the whole thing. And that made her very happy in more ways than one as she continued to suck his cock dry of his delicious cum. Naruto could not help but feel the way Ino was taking in his seed and apparently enjoyed it as she was blushing very deeply right in front of his eyes. He had tried to warn Ino of his release, but it was now apparent that he did not have to as she was able to handle it well enough on her own. And he could only watch as she took in more and more of his cum and not show any discomfort whatsoever. Once that was over, He looked at Ino, who then moved away her head from his cock and then smiled at him as she swallowed what she had in her mouth. That was arousing to him, and that was increased by the way Ino then rubbed her breasts and nipples on his penis, making it react and become harder. And he watched eagerly as Ino moved to the side and beckoned to him to finally make his own moves on her. And she did not have to give him another invitation as he quickly moved to her, eager to do the same thing to her as she had done to him. Naruto-kun. Ino sighed in happiness as Naruto was now touching and pleasuring her body once more, and he was a lot more impassioned than before with his actions. She could tell as he sucked and licked her breasts and nipples while moving his hands over to them. He started caressing them in time with his mouth and tongue, which served to make her all the more pleasured by his actions. He moved his fingers to her sex and could tell that she was really wet as well as hot and eager for more, and he was more than ready and willing to give her just that. She felt her lover's mouth on her breasts and nipples, which was soon joined by his tongue, and the pleasure she got from him was good. Naruto could not help himself as he lavished as much oral attention as he could on Ino's breasts and nipples while using his hands to also caress and massage her breasts at the same time. And she was more than willing to make her pleasure known to Naruto as well. Yes, Naruto-kun. Naruto enjoyed the feel and taste of Ino's breasts and nipples along with the warmth of her luscious and well-formed fleshy orbs. He however was sure that he was going to take things to a much higher state as he began to move away from her breasts, but not before making sure that he was able to lavish more than equal attention to both her breasts and nipples. He moved his mouth away from her bust, but not before kissing her deeply. Once the kiss ended between them, he moved back to kissing and licking his way to between her legs. His hands were already ahead, and when he touched her clitoris, Ino was more than willing to react to his actions as she quickly parted her legs without hesitation. Naruto took that as a good thing, and he was now soon between Ino's thighs. He did not waste time as he placed Ino's legs on his shoulders, and to Ino's surprise, Naruto moved to his knees before sitting down on his butt, making her hips rise up and allow him to see her pussy in a very interesting angle. He did not mind as the angle allowed him to see Ino like this. He did not waste time as he began to lick Ino's sex, and he started to use his fingers to play with her hips, ass, and parting her sex's outer folds, allowing him to really see her in all her glory, much to Ino's embarrassment and her arousal as he could see her releasing more of her own wetness. He did not waste a single moment as he licked her inner sheath and outer walls slowly to make sure that he was going to make her very happy. And Ino was more than willing to shout out the results of Naruto's actions on her sex. Kami, there. Right there. Yes. Ino was utterly happy as the pleasure flowed through every nerve in her body at that exact moment as Naruto continued to use his tongue to lap up her juices while also rubbing his tongue into her inner walls. Each moment that Naruto ran his tongue on her pussy and even thrust it into her inner sheath was more than enough to make Ino moan out with each passing breath. And she relished the sensations as those feelings flowed up and down every part of her body, and it was a wonder to her that she had not reached her orgasm yet. She had masturbated before and knew how to pleasure herself, but having a man do it to you was an experience all to itself. And Ino loved the way that Naruto was quickly finding out just how to pleasure her the way she wanted. He was quickly able to learn just how fast he could move his tongue in and out of her sex and how to really touch every part of her inner core. She wailed away her pleasure while Naruto also caressed her body slowly and patiently, which was a contrast to the passionate and frenzied way he was licking her sex. There, yes, right there. More. I feel so good. It was not going to be long for her to reach her limits, and Ino knew it. Nor did she want the pleasure to stop. This was so good, and she was going to savor her climax when it came, and arrive it did as she tightened her legs around Naruto and her body trembled as she cried out her orgasm. Ooh! Ino felt like she was about to pass out from all the pleasure that had suddenly slammed hard into her brain. And she could not help but look to see Naruto continuing to lap up her juices from her sex, and he did not seem to mind at all what he was doing. That made her very happy as she decided to enjoy it all as Naruto began to gently lower her down and place her legs back on the ground slowly while still lapping up her wetness. As for Naruto, he enjoyed the way that he was able to bring Ino to orgasm, and he enjoyed tasting her wetness on the tip of his tongue, and soon all around it. He also made sure to reach out and use his fingers to once more play with her pussy and clit once he was able to take in as much as he could, and he recalled the feeling of her inner walls caressing both tongue and fingers at the very same time. He enjoyed the sight also of Ino as she began to recover from her orgasm, and also as soon as he was sure that her breathing was normal, he moved to kiss her. And she did not mind that at all as she tasted her own juices on his lips as well as his tongue. She even licked his face once they parted from one another to make sure that she lapped up all of her wetness was on him. Once that was done between the two of them, Naruto looked at Ino as he began to rub his rock-hard dick on the outer folds of her vagina, making her moan as her sex was still sensitive from her first climax of the night. She looked at him deeply, already knowing just what he was doing to her sex and what he was silently asking of her. She smiled at him and beckoned for him to do so when she moved one of her hands to her sex and parted her pussy's outer folds. That was more than enough to tell Naruto that she was more than willing for him to do so, and her next words were more than enough to make him double sure of what he was about to do. "Naruto-kun, drive it deep, I want it now." Ino was still a bit bossy and Naruto could not help but smirk. He would have teased her a bit first, make her cry out and want it more, but decided not to. He was also very eager for this, and delaying it sounded outright nuts to him anyway. So he moved his cock into the outside of her pussy and pushed in fast and hard just as Ino moved her hand away. And in that moment, Naruto was buried deeply into Ino's wet vagina, and thankfully the orgasm she had helped ease any feeling of pain, while the wetness allowed Naruto to slide into her sex without any difficulty or pain, which was evident on Ino's face. Both of them shouted out at the very same time once Naruto stopped moving. Ooh! Ino was in heaven as she felt her pussy become filled by Naruto's cock, and it was a feeling that she was not going to forget at all, as Naruto's cock was now all the way into the base. The blonde kunoichi was utterly pleased by the feeling of fullness, and she wanted to savor this closeness before the two of them would move to the next step of their time together. She moved her hands to take Naruto to her, and soon they kissed one another deeply and both enjoyed the chance to relax and enjoy the whole situation between the two of them. As for Naruto himself, he enjoyed the kiss and relished the feeling of his cock being this deep in Ino's sex. It amazed him that they were even able to go this far as well. The blonde shinobi moaned into the kiss while also feeling Ino's more than well-formed breasts and hard nipples rubbing on his own. Once the kiss ended with them parting from one another to get some breath into their lungs, he began to move his hips, drawing back and pulling his dick slowly out of Ino's womanhood. Ino was more than willing to moan out her pleasure as the sensations of her lover's sex rubbing her inner walls ran through every part of her body. That served to make Naruto all the more pleased with himself, while he also gritted his teeth at the feeling of Ino's walls caressing and gripping his cock as he pulled out. It was as if Ino's inner walls wanted him to stay where he was and implored him to stay, and boy was he tempted to do just that, but he was able to refuse that and soon was nearly out of her sex. Ino moaned sadly at that, but Naruto knew that this was the right time and made his move. He moved back in slowly into Ino's sex, and the blonde kunoichi moved her head back and cried out happily as she was being filled back up again by her lover. Naruto gritted his teeth as the pleasure ran from his cock all the way to the very roots of his nerves and even to his hair. It was like every nerve ending on his body was on fire, and it was not in a painful way. By all rights he was on fire already, and his cock felt that each time he buried himself into Ino's hot sex, it was going to suddenly melt in the feeling of it all right there and then. He did not let that bother him as he continued to move slowly, hearing Ino's moans of pleasure each time he did it that way, and he enjoyed every second of it. Naruto-kun, there, harder, faster. Naruto was soon picking up the pace of his actions on Ino's sex, and the pleasure for them continued to grow by the second. And soon it was not long before he was moving faster and deeper into Ino's sex, and she was more than willing to let him do so. The blonde shinobi then moved forward to be before Ino, who then wrapped her legs around his hips and used them to push on his ass to make sure that his thrusts were deeper and harder than before. Naruto did not mind and soon was locked in a deep kiss with Ino. Once the two of them parted from the kiss to get air into their lungs, they were both willing to shout out their own pleasure to one another. "Ino-chan, feels so hot." "Naruto-kun, ooh, more. So tight, you feel so good." "Naruto-kun, Ino-chan." Both of them could hold on no longer as they were slammed hard by their respective orgasm at the very same time. Ooh! Ino tensed up deeply as she felt her sex being filled to the very limit by her lover's cum, and it was a very good feeling. She wanted to make sure that feeling lasted for as long as she could, so she wrapped her legs tighter around Naruto's hips. That was done to make sure that he was able to unleash his full load into her sex, despite the fact that she could feel her body become boneless and totally relaxed. And she could not help but feel her vagina's inner walls milk Naruto's cock to drain every drop of his cum into her. It was delicious. She felt his body shiver on her own, and she could not help but look at Naruto and smile as they both kissed one another. Naruto himself was also enjoying the orgasm between him and Ino as he felt his dick unleash more of his cum into every area in Ino's own hot and wet sex. He stayed still to enjoy the feeling of his orgasm along with the feeling of Ino's pussy milking his cock for all he was worth and allowing him to fill her sex with his seed. He could feel the exhaustion and bliss in Ino's form as it was more than able to mirror his own feelings of exhaustion and contentment. It was all worth it as he and Ino were in a deep kiss with one another. As soon as things began to cool down, they parted from one another, and soon Naruto moved away from Ino and reached for the nearby cloth blanket. As soon as he had it, he laid down next to the blonde kunoichi and covered himself and her at the same time. Ino smiled warmly at him as he smiled back. They hugged one another, and soon the need to sleep overcame them as they held on to each other for the night. The next day, Naruto woke up and yawned as he felt the need to wake up along with the feeling of exhaustion, and he wondered briefly why was it he was naked as the day he was born. He then recalled what happened only moments afterwards and he could not help but blush a bit at the memory of what he and Ino had done. He looked to his side and found the kunoichi in question still there sleeping and she had a smile of contentment on her face. He could not help but notice that she looked a lot more attractive like this and he could easily see that she was utterly naked. He looked at the sleeping blonde kunoichi and smiled a bit as he then moved forward to kiss her cheek a little and as he did that, Ino moaned a bit and smiled at the action. He liked that a great deal and as he moved away he was slightly surprised when he felt Ino's arms move to wrap around the back of his neck as she looked at him and spoke to him rather seductively. "You certainly know how to wake up a girl, Naruto-kun." Naruto smiled a bit more as he kissed her yet again and she was more than willing to kiss him back deeply. The kiss lasted between the two of them for a while and when they parted from one another the two decided to talk to one another about what they had done together last night and what that was going to mean for them in the future when they were back in Konoha and it was Ino who went first. "Naruto-kun, what we did last night was something else, and I have to apologize again to you." "For what?" "For a lot of things. You and I didn't exactly have a good relationship and I used to see you as an idiot, but I have to admit that I respected your determination and drive to succeed no matter what was in your way or who was in your way. Despite the times you were always knocked down, you get right back up and keep on moving. I guess it took me a while to see it and also change my way of seeing you. That and the fact that I finally figured out why was it that you were always the isolated one. I have to say that I am utterly impressed that despite your past, you still carry on and yet you never changed into something or someone else." Naruto could not help but be happy for that though he was still curious about another matter. One thing that he knew was the reason why Ino and Sakura were friendly rivals. "What about your attraction to Sasuke?" Ino was deep in thought and looked out of the house that they were living in and after some time, she spoke to Naruto. "I guess that I should expect you would ask me that again at some point, Naruto-kun. Truth be told I do still care about Sasuke, but after all he has done, I doubt that I can love him for what he has done and what he has become. First he turns his back on the village, tries to kill you, Sakura, Yamato-sensei, and Sai. Plus working with Orochimaru and that maniac's forces, and willing to turn away from everything. I can't love him the way he has become, Naruto-kun, and that is a truth." "What about Sai?" "I like Sai. I know that he is good looking despite the pale skin thing, but I can't help but feel that he might be hiding things about himself. I like him, but not that much since I don't like it when one hides too many secrets from me. You were nice enough to tell me the truth about yourself, even if I accidentally discovered it on my own." Naruto could not help but sigh a bit as he could tell that Ino was not lying about such things to him, but he now had to ask about the most serious topic. "And what about me, being a Jinchuriki?" Ino said nothing at first, as she recalled the time she had tried to pull that move on Naruto and accidentally found out about the Kyuubi and it took some time before she was able to finally make sense of what she saw. She, like all the others in the village of her age when they were younger, wondered why was it that Naruto was always being ignored by the villagers though she never pursued it and let it pass. She suspected something when she like Sakura saw the red chakra and while her chakra control was not too high even with her medical training under Tsunade but did not pursue it at all. But when she finally saw the Kyuubi she was quite shocked and it was there that she finally saw why Naruto was treated that badly by the village and why he pulled pranks as a kid. She thought it over for a while and never spoke of her accidental action to Naruto. And it was only the day before in the morning that she finally spoke to Naruto about her discovery. She recalled his reaction and how shocked and dismayed he was and what he asked of her. She had never seen Naruto so sad and dismayed over anything and they kept silent about it and worked side by side in silence. It was at night that they finally spoke about it. They managed to iron some things out but it was still a sore subject which they ignored until they got intimate. "I don't see you as the Kyuubi, Naruto-kun. You've already changed a lot since we were kids. And the fact that you have always stood by all of us back home despite everything tells me that you are a good person. You may indeed be a Jinchuriki, but you are you, not a demon in any sense, though I can bet that if we called you a demon when it comes to pulling pranks on people it would fit you very well." Naruto could not help but smile a bit at that as he could easily see the meaning behind that statement. Ino smiled and then moved to kiss Naruto deeply and when she parted from Naruto, she spoke to him once more. "You are a good guy, and even though I can bet that we still have a lot to do if we do decide to make our relationship a lot more serious, I am willing to take a chance and try to make it work considering how it happened. The only question on my mind is if you are willing to give me a chance to do that." Naruto smiled and nodded sincerely, making Ino smile again and spoke once more. "I also promise never to reveal anything about what I have learned no matter what happens or who." Asked Naruto-kun. "Now, let's take some time to be together before breakfast, okay?" Naruto did not mind as the two of them began to cuddle up with one another and enjoy the moments that they had with them. There would be time for that later in the day and they would make sure that they were going to make this relationship work between the two of them. One thing was obvious in his mind, He had to work hard to make this situation work out for the both of them for the rest of their lives. Later, as Naruto stirred the pot filled with soup made from clean fresh water, wild herbs, and slices of freshwater fish that he had hunted before, he thought about what they had done earlier. After a very good session of kissing, petting, which led to another round of sex, Ino and him got up and she was now off to take a much-needed bath to get herself cleaned up. He therefore decided to stay behind to cook some soup and managed to get some fresh food with the aid of his cage bushin. The soup would help get them up while the fish that he had caught with the cage bushin was now roasting over the hot fire and the smell of cooking fish was very nice. He had not expected this to happen between him and Ino, but he was not going to complain in the very least as they were on good terms now. And if he thought about it, he had to admit that time here on the island had helped him get to know Ino a lot more and also see that she was not just beautiful on the outside, but inside as well. He then moved the fish to cook the other side while checking the now cooling fresh water that he had boiled earlier in the containers that he and Ino had salvaged from before. It was here that the Kyuubi decided to speak to him. "Nice to see that you are in a good mood, brat. At least now I don't have to worry about you whining." "I'll bet you are, but now I have questions for you, and no, you are not going to get away them." "I was wondering when you were going to try and grill me, kid. So go ahead and try to grill me." "Did you try to harm Ino-chan when she saw you and me?" "Nope, she certainly was shocked to see me anyway, but you know that I can't meddle around with the seal because if I did, you would know about it. That's why I decided to play the subtle card and avoid getting your attention, and I dare say that it worked very well." She also learned the real reason why so many people ignored you and treated you badly for so long. "And it seemed to be I've done something that was helpful than harmful. Anything else you want to ask, Gaki?" "What else happened?" "That was just about it, you know. She saw me, asked what I was doing in you, and she figured out the rest on her own. Anyway, at least you both managed to mend fences, which by the way was a damn good thing since she packs quite the mouth. But only when she's shouting, right brat?" "Geez, you are really dirty-minded, Kyuubi." "So what? I am what I am, so I don't need to hide anything about myself. Before I go though, you should know that you dodged a kunai to the head as it were." "What's that supposed to mean?" "She was not fertile that night, you dolt. That means you did not knock her up last night, and for that you should be thankful. The last thing you need is to have the whole village find out that Ino got pregnant. And it's going to be a real pain for you since they know you're the only man on the whole island with her. They are going to know it's you. You can bet 10 that her team are not going to be too happy about it, and let's not forget her family either." Naruto gulped as he was now able to grasp the whole situation, and that made the Kyuubi snicker as it sensed the utter nervousness in his longtime jailer. "Keep your chin up, fool. She's not pregnant yet and you can have plenty of time to get to know one another until the time is right for you to shuck off the clothes and be able to do it under law. Though why is it you humans need laws to have mates and a house full of healthy and strong younglings, I'll never understand. Anyway, I know some brand new techniques that you can use if you want. Now I am going to go and see those images again. They will be the only entertainment I am going to have, so I might as well enjoy it." "You pervert. Look who's talking." Naruto could not help but shake his head at that as he went back to what he was doing before being interrupted by his demonic resident. And it was not long before he was soon joined by Ino, and she seemed to be relaxed now, and that was something that he was more than happy to see on her face. They soon managed to get their food into their bodies, and the two of them decided to relax before going back to what they did on the island. It was near midday that Ino finally saw what they had been hoping to see. A ship, and it was carrying the flag of Konoha. She moved away from the bird and quickly called to Naruto as they moved to light the signal fires. They watched the ship carefully as the smoke rose up into the sky, and soon the ship was moving their way. That was something they were very happy to see, and soon they moved to the beach, but not before getting the torches they had made and lit them to move around. As the ship came closer, the two blonde ninja looked at their rescue and smiled before looking at one another, silently talking to one another that once they got back to the village, they were going to have a lot to talk about in private with one another. Epilogue. As Naruto got himself into his room, he was in the mood to finally get some much-needed sleep and also take some time to eat. It was a long day and the extra training had been difficult on him, but it was very much worth it. The blonde shinobi was happy to finally be home and also get the chance to be with family and friends again. The former would be his adopted family and the latter were obviously his fellow ninja. His relationships were still the same with the others, though as with Ino was a lot different in private and out of the public eye. Ino and him spent a lot of time talking as well as making out, and he was quite surprised to see the normally loud and bossy Ino Yamanaka become such a passionate and slightly submissive type around him. Not to the point that she was changed, but enough to make him raise his eyebrow more than once. He had no idea that Ino was this kind of person, but he was not going to complain for any reason. As he was about to go to his bed and sleep, he was surprised to see that his room had been cleaned and meticulously given a makeover. He was wondering just what was going on since he had no memory of ever cleaning his room, but he got his answer when he heard the door from his bathroom open. "Hi, I wish that Naruto-kun would be nice enough to make sure his place was cleaned every now and then. Naruto was quite surprised to see Ino walk out of the bathroom, and she was only wearing a towel on her body as well as having her hair spread out behind her. The blonde kunoichi looked at him, and instead of panicking at the fact that she only had a towel covering her naked form, she smiled seductively towards him and spoke. "Nice to see you made it, Naruto-kun. Hope you like the fact that your room is now clean." "Ino-chan? What are you doing here?" Ino gave a slight sigh and replied, "I came here to make sure that this place of yours looks nice. If you and I are going to be in a relationship, it would be really nice for both of us being in a place that's clean and healthy. You had such a messy place that I had to take a bath afterwards, just as you arrived." "Oh, sorry, I never got the chance to clean up." Ino sighed and spoke seriously. "I know, but at least try, Naruto-kun, for not just your sake, but ours, and besides, you need a bath." Before Naruto could complain, the blonde kunoichi made her move and began to remove her clothes, making her sigh as she could smell the sweat on him, and while it was not nice at times, she did not mind. Naruto was nice enough not to resist his lover, and soon he was nearly naked, with only his boxers being the last article of clothing that he still had on him. And before he could say anything, Ino spoke for him. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up, and I know just how to do that." Ino then removed her towel to reveal her naked form, and that was more than enough to convince Naruto not to resist Ino. As the two entered the room, Ino took the soap and shampoo that she had brought in and soon began to wet Naruto's body as well as her own. That was not missed by Naruto in the slightest, and before he could come up with anything to say, she began to clean him while rubbing her soaked body on his own. The blonde shinobi could not help but be aroused by this, and he could not help but finally speak to Ino. "What are you doing, Ino-chan?" Ino smiled and replied, "I am giving you a bath, Naruto-kun, and I am going to be the one to clean you, so we are going to have ourselves a nice long bath. Afterwards, we are going to have some fun." Naruto sighed a bit but smiled anyway as he kissed Ino as she began to rub her hands on his body, all the way to his cock, and began to gently stroke it the way he liked. This was going to be one bath that he was going to be happy that he took without making any complaints. To be continued.